Okay, so we're resuming our question and answer by video after a little hiatus. So we got a question from Jillian from California, and she wrote in to ask, I hear you talk, or I see that you talk about and hear you talk about studying iconic photographers, historically significant photographers quite often, and I'm just wondering why you think that's so important and what relevance that has to me and my work today. So Jillian, one thing that Karen and I teach is that when you are going to have a portrait photography business, that in order to be profitable and successful, you have to distinguish yourself. And the way to do that, we believe, is through being excellent in your craft. And studying these photographers will help you to be excellent because their use of light, the way that they've done things, it's completely relevant to what you do today. So whether they photographed with a 4x5 view camera or glass plate negatives, it's still the same as and relates to you. So I'm going to go over some of my favorites and as a resource for anyone who's watching to see, maybe that's a good place to start. So I have many photography books that I study still and that I've looked at since I was young. Some of my favorites are Alfred Stieglitz and Edward Steichen, and I'm going to show you a few. So we have Alfred Stieglitz. This is called the Steerage. And it's an excellent use of composition. If you see the gentleman in the white hat looking down at the lower class, the use of composition with the white looking down leads your eye down into the lower class, and he's trying to tell a story just with that image. I photograph portraits. I'm a portrait photographer. I don't really love landscapes or necessarily scenes of things, but I like portraits of people. So this one of Alfred Stieglitz, this is Georgia O'Keeffe, who was his wife, and I think this is a beautiful portrait. I love the composition, the cropping, the use of light. So that to me is very interesting and one of my favorites. This one here is by Edward Steichen, and this is a portrait of Rodin, who was a sculptor artist, and I love the composition in that and the use of light and shadow. So let's see, we have one more from Steichen that is a favorite of mine, and this one is a beautiful portrait of a woman by Edward Steichen, and look at how pretty that lighting is on her. She looks very dignified and graceful, and so if you are going to be photographing a person who wants to look dignified and graceful, or that's the message, this would be a good image to study. Another one of my favorite photographers, and she was from the early 1900s, is Gertrude Casimir. She photographed women, children, moms with their babies, and I'll just show you some of my favorite images of hers. So this is called The Manger, and this is a mother and child. Again, beautiful use of lighting, composition, one of my very favorite images. So we're not doing anything new necessarily with our work with mothers and children. This has been done for at least a couple hundred years in photography. Here's another one of my favorites, the little cherub boy with the mother surrounding. So again, moms and children was one of her themes, and that's why I feel connected to her. So I would say pick someone who you feel connected with, who did work that you like to do. This is a really interesting family portrait. The mother is looking in at her little girls, and the use of light is great. The stairwell draws you down right to the subject that you want to see. So Gertrude Casimir, excellent photographer, beautiful work. Another woman who came later on is Dorothea Lange. Probably you would recognize some of her images. This is probably her most famous image of mother and child. And this one, she did documentary work, but before she started her documentary work, she had a studio in San Francisco, and she photographed families, children, moms and babies. There's an excellent biography about her that I would recommend. I love her portraits, even of, when she was documenting her use of composition. She didn't just go up and start, snapping away. She thought about what she was doing the whole time and was telling a story with her images. So she's very interesting to read about and to study her work, and excellent use of composition. Let's see, another of my favorite photographers, Yusuf Karsh. He had a very long career and very excellent use of light and composition. So this is probably his most famous that you would recognize, a portrait of Winston Churchill. And again, just excellent use of light, posing, composition. He had just a couple seconds to take this, and look what happened. Excellent photographer. I love this as well. This is Picasso, who you should know as an artist. And again, excellent use of composition to tell a story about Picasso and his relationship with his art. So Yusuf Karsh, definitely study the beautiful use of lighting, posing, composition, and storytelling. So let's see, Sally Mann is a more contemporary photographer whose work I love, and I feel that she's primarily known for portraits of her own children, but again, beautiful composition in very simple way, and great storytelling, and her images are fabulous. This is a great book to get and study if you like more simplistic, storytelling. I love how her subjects, how their eyes are, and I think that to me speaks to me. So I love Sally Mann. Imogen Cunningham was another photographer around the same time as Dorothea Lange, a woman, and I love her work. She was a contemporary of Dorothea Lange. They were friends, and she did mostly art photography, but beautiful. Let's see if I can find. This is one of my favorites, and this was another photographer, Edward Weston, whose work is, again, another name that I would study. But this is a portrait Imogen did of Edward and his girlfriend, wife. It's just so beautiful. Look at that simple composition, and it just tells a lot about their relationship. So this is a portrait that Edward Weston did of Alfred Stieglitz. So you can see they were all learning from each other. Again, great lighting, very simple, beautiful way to pose a man. So again, it can translate definitely into today. And last but not least, this is a photographer that I, just in the last probably 10 years, have learned about, Edward Curtis, and he's fascinating. He lived in the early 1900s photographing the Native Americans and took on an enormous project, but I found his work fascinating for several reasons. First of all, he used a view camera with glass plate negatives that he would hike down all around the country to photograph these people. And then he was excellent in his craft because he wanted his portraits to be so beautiful that he would paint on the back of the glass plates with gold leaf before he would print them. So here are two beautiful portraits, very simple, of the Native Americans. And there is a biography about him. He's, again, very fascinating, inspiring character. And it's called Short Nights of the Shadow Catcher, and it's about Edward Curtis, and his work is stunningly beautiful. So those are some a good place to start, and I hope that you are inspired to go learn something from these wonderful, wonderful people that came before us and are the reason why we get to do what we do today. Good luck. Thanks, Jillian.